All right, so welcome back. We're going to try to finish the chapter 4 notes today. We might not quite get there, so if that's the case, there'll be a short one tomorrow. But I don't want this one to go as long as the last one. I know it was super long, and that's tough. So anyway, the test for Unit 1 test, chapters 1 through 4, will be on Friday. Chapter 4 packet due Friday as well. I'll try to have your quizzes and your quiz and the packet for chapter 3 graded for you in the next day or so. So anyway, let's get right to it. So last time we were talking about the status of the colonial relationship with Britain. And so Britain is starting to tax the colonies. There's a lot of back and forth about who's right and who's wrong, and you've never taxed us before, and why are you suddenly doing it now? We didn't ask for your help in regards to the French and Indian War, and now you're staying here. This is the colonists saying that to and about the British troops. So there's a lot of, kind of revolt, I guess, or there's a lot of animosity growing between the colonists and the British. In many ways, it seems a lot like Bacon's rebellion, right? So here we are at the point where we're moving towards serious revolt because the British are going to keep doing things that the colonists don't like, and the colonists are going to respond in ways that the British don't like. So, one, you have basically the Townshend program. Townshend was a political leader, parliamentary leader in Britain, and he, again, kind of like George Grenville that we talked about the other day, is someone who who is kind of has the ear of the king and is suggesting all these ideas for which to tax the colonies and things like that, or to, at the very least, make them be subjects or subjugate themselves to British rule a little bit more. So they start off with many things, many different laws. First of which is something called the Quartering Act or the Mutiny Act. And basically, what it's about is that the colonists must provide room and supplies for British soldiers that are staying over in America. In other words, they must quarter them, okay? Must give them room and board, and give them food and supplies and things that they need, a place to stay while they're over there, okay? So essentially, the British say, well, we need to stay around there. We need to stay around there because we need to protect you from natives, right? We need to protect you from the Native Americans. They're allied with the French, and they're going to start attacking you, right? Well, what's the problem with that comment? Because the natives have been there forever, and the colonists seem to have been able to take care of themselves. So why do you need to stay for that now? So that's an issue, right? So the British claim they're keeping them there to keep them safe from the natives, right? The colonists, of course, believe that you're doing it to keep an eye on us. You're doing it to impose your will over the subjects, over your subjects in the Americas. All of a sudden, when you haven't been doing it for 150 years, now all of a sudden you're here. Again, that goes back to the old idea of salutary neglect. Okay? So does that make sense? You let us do our own thing, and now you're not, and you're telling us, oh, we want to keep you safe from Indians. Well, we were safe. We took care of ourselves. It's fine. The colonists see it again as, one, oh, you're just saying that because you want to hang around and kind of keep an eye on us. We don't need that protection, okay? They call it an assault on their liberties. And furthermore, they're upset about this because they say, we do this anyway. Of course we're going to provide quarters for troops. We do this anyway. They're also British. So why do you need to make a law to tell us to do something that we're already doing? That's unnecessary, and it's upsetting. Okay, so again, it's another attempt at a law by the Crown, by the British government, that is met with distaste and dislike from the colonists, so they kind of rebel against that, and this is another law that doesn't quite work out. Okay, so now Townsend, same guy, imposes what's called the Townsend duties, and basically it's a new set of taxes on all goods imported into the colonies. Right, this is another attempt to make the colonies pay. Again, we're saying you've never taxed us before and suddenly you are. That's not fair. Okay, that's not fair to do this, right? Furthermore, the Townsend duties also force New York, the state of New York, to disband their colonial assembly. Oops. So New York has to disband their colonial assembly, meaning they can't, basically, it's the crown saying, well, you can't make political decisions anymore, even though you've been doing it for a long time. We don't want you to do it. We don't want you doing it anymore, right? So of course the response to this is going to be, what do you think? Colonists don't want to do it. They're angry, and it results in something kind of important. So the colonies start to kind of circulate letters around to the different colonies and stuff. And this is one of the first instances where the outcome here of the Townsend duties, and this is in the late 1760s. So we're here, and we'll say about 1767, 1769. So right around this time, right? And I've told you many times, right, that the colonists love to read. They love reading. So they circulate letters around, say, look at what they're doing in New York. They're going to do it to you next. We have to do something. So what happens is now for the first time, these 13 separate colonies, where the people are Virginians or Carolinians or Marylanders or Massachusetts, are coming together, coalescing as one big group, right? Cause and effect, causation. This is a big moment. The colonies coming together a little bit to stand up against, what they see as the British overstepping their bounds, right? Let's take things one step further, right? So with the negative response to the Townsend duties, the British enact something called the Intolerable Acts. What they're actually called is the Coercive Acts. But the colonists don't like them, so they call them the Intolerable Acts. This is, again, the British attempting to impose their will over the colonists. And the Intolerable Acts do four things, right? Number one, they close the port of Boston, so it closes the port of Boston. Number two, it greatly reduces colonial right to self-government, okay, kind of disbanding the colonial assembly here. Now they make it all throughout the colonies. So they greatly reduce colonial right to self-government. They also remove the right to a trial by jury. They destroy the colonists' right to a fair trial by jury. In other words, this is something that needs to be left up to the British. And then finally, they require, again, going in with the Quartering Act, they say that all empty homes and any barns can be requisitioned by the British, basically, to be used as a place to quarter soldiers. Okay, so again, they closed the port of Boston, making Boston seem like a martyr to the colonies as a whole. They destroy people's right to a trial by jury. They greatly reduce the colonists' right to self-government, and they allow for the quartering or the requisition, taking of unused lands for British military use, right? So again, four things. Close the port of Boston, destroy the right to a trial by jury, greatly reduce colonial self-government, and the quartering or requisition of unused lands for British military use. Again, this is the overstepping that the British do. It upsets the colonists, and you can understand that, of course, the reaction isn't going to be good. Where are we? We're a step closer to revolution. All right, so continuing, what else happens, right? What else happens leading up to the revolution here? Okay, well, of course, one big event is the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre happens on March 5th, 1770. So that's where we are. There's a picture of the Boston Massacre here. It's the etching. Basically what happens here is 5 colonists are killed. As you can see, there's the blood spatters and stuff like that. When British soldiers open fire on a group of unarmed colonists that are protesting basically the British, sorry, that's 1770, not 1776. So the British are there in Boston. They don't like them being in Boston. We all know that. We've established that already. Okay? And there's a group there kind of protesting, and they don't want the Bostonians there, or they don't want the British there. And so the story goes, somebody either throws a club or something at, or a stone or a rock or something like that at one of the British soldiers, these protesters, these unarmed protesters. Or there's a loud bang or something like that, and the British open fire, killing 5 people. Okay? Not too dissimilar than some of the protests that we see today, right? America has a rich history of people protesting, people's right to organize and protest and things of that nature. And that all kind of starts with the Boston Massacre way back in 1770. The real effect of the Boston Massacre, though, comes in this picture, this etching by Paul Revere, the same guy that we know that did the Midnight Ride and all that. He was a silversmith. And he makes this etching picture on a piece of silver. And then it gets transported to print, and it circulates around the colonies. And it's an image that is very effective for people to get upset about, kind of what they see happening. Not to make something too political of a connection, but again, it's similar to people's reaction to, a lot of people's reaction to the George Floyd thing, and the officer that's on his neck and that sort of thing. That goes viral. Everybody finds out about it. People are angry, right? And they want to do something about it, okay? So again, as I've been telling you, the colonists, again and again, the colonists love to read. So what they do is they organize these groups called committees of correspondence. And the job of the committees of correspondence is to basically get information together and transpose it around the colonies so that information can be shared. It creates, and this is important, it creates a sense of interconnectivity amongst the colonies. You see here, the colonies are coming together. They're coalescing over this issue of, what's fair and what's not from the British. The fact that these people love to read, I keep telling you that, you probably wonder, why is that important? This is why. This is why right here. People write up their grievances. It circulates around the colony. It makes its way to the other colonies. Everybody reads about it. Everybody gets upset. You want to make change, right? It's the same thing we do when videos today or things like that become viral. You get people on Twitter or Instagram and Facebook to make comments and say things to bring people together for some sort of common goal that they want to achieve, whether you agree with it or not. So committees of correspondence here are very, very important, okay? Very, very important ultimately for success in the revolution, because they use these same committees to give information around during the revolution so that all the colonies can stay united throughout the war. This is where that whole argument of no taxation without representation comes from. It's a famous line. What does that actually mean? Give us representation in Parliament and we'll be okay with your taxes. Give us representation and some say, and it's fine. But don't tax us without our consent. We need to be able to consent to this. You went 150 years and let us alone. And now all of a sudden you want to get involved. You want to change things. You want to start taxing us. That's fine, but in response, give us a seat in Parliament. Give us a couple seats in Parliament. Give us opportunity to represent ourselves. That's what happens. You give somebody freedom for too long, it becomes very hard to rein them back in. Okay? This goes with this whole idea of virtual and actual representation. We've talked about virtual representation before. The British think that just because the colonists are subject of Britain, they are providing them with representation. That is virtual representation. Actual representation, of course, goes to what I just said, right? Give us seats. Give us a spot in Parliament. Give us a seat at the table. That, to us, as colonists, is representation. It's what the British believe, virtual, and what the colonists believe, they want actual representation. That difference in opinion and belief is causing more problems and leading us closer to war. So, next big event, of course, is the Boston Tea Party. Now, I mentioned this the other day about the Sons of Liberty. So, the Boston Tea Party is a really kind of big moment here to get people ready for war, get people ultimately ready for the revolution, right? This is 1774. It's a little bit later. 1774. And it's organized by the Sons of Liberty, which we talked about in the last video. And they basically come together and, they say, hey, let's dress up as natives and we're going to sneak on a British ship and throw all the tea over the side as a form of protest. Now, we only hear about the Boston Tea Party, but why was it important? Why was it so successful? Because the biggest one was in Boston. That involved the biggest names like Sam Adams and John Hancock. But it was a coordinated effort through committees of correspondence again, right? Through committees of correspondence again, it's a coordinated effort that happened not only at the port of Boston, but several ports throughout the colonies right around the same time. These big tea parties where they throw everything over the side to protest British tea taxes and basically protest British efforts to tax in the colonies in general, right? What does this do? It's another event of things where you see the population of the colonies mobilize together to come together to achieve a common goal. All right, I hope that makes sense. Now, let's take a look at this. So here we are by 1774, and what is going on, right? Well, consequences of British policy from 1763 to 1774. Well, what are the consequences? From the Stamp Act through the Coercive Act. Did they raise any money? Did the British raise any money for that debt? That's what they want to do. Remember, they have a big war debt. Let's tax the colonists and get them to pay it back that way. Did they raise any money for that debt? No. Did they manage to keep the colonists weak and divided? No, just the opposite, right? Did they prove that they had sovereignty over the colonies? No, they didn't do that either. So it's a massive fail on the part of the British to try to rein in the colonists, which is what they want to do. They want to raise money to pay off their war debt. Colonists won't pay the debt, won't pay the taxes because they think they're unfair. The colonists aren't weak and divided as they had been before as 13 separate colonies. Now they're much stronger and more united. And the British proved that they have sovereignty over the colonies, meaning that they can enact laws and have some sort of governing authority. No, because we're not listening to what they're doing, right? So again, these consequences of these British policy attempts are all failures, right? The colonies are refusing to do what the British want to do, and again, we're closer and closer to war. So, because now we don't want to listen to British authority, we want to, maybe start finding new sources of authority. And of course, this is the First Continental Congress. Okay, so now for the first time, the colonies are coming together as one. 13 colonies meeting to discuss what are we going to do here about the British and their overreach. Okay, so what demands do they make, right? What demands do they make? They make, essentially, there's 5 outcomes of the First Continental Congress. Okay, so let's go over them. Number 1, they reject the plan for union under British authority. They basically say, we're not going to be united under the authority of the British. So that's number 1. They reject a plan for unity under British authority. Number 2, they produce an angry list of grievances that they're going to send to Britain and say, hey, this is what you've done to us. This is what we don't like. This is what we want. We have these grievances with you. Let's try to address them and fix the issue. Number 3, they propose a resolution for military preparations for British attack. They know, the colonists know, that if we send this list of grievances, if we reject the British plan for union under their authority, there's going to be military consequences. So let's prepare for that. They also create a non-import-export consumption treaty, basically, to stop trade with Britain. So basically what that means is they're not going to trade with Britain anymore. Okay? They're not going to import British goods. They're not going to export goods to Britain. This is going to anger Britain even more. Okay? They want all these things, right? And the one thing they don't demand at this point is they don't demand independence, and that's really important. So it tells you that the British, or that the colonists, still want to be British subjects and are still fine with that. But they don't demand their freedom quite yet at this point, okay? And that's probably a smart thing to do. They want to see how the British respond and make a final decision, okay? And what's the 5th and final outcome of the First Continental Congress? They agree to meet again. Why is that important? Because if they don't agree to meet again, this is going to go nowhere. But the fact that they agree to meet again, it means they're serious about what they're trying to do. We're going to see how this works, and if it doesn't work, we're going to meet again and we're going to make a decision. And of course, that's going to be the Second Continental Congress, and that's going to be the decision to break away from Britain, which starts the Revolutionary War. Okay, so again, the 5 outcomes of the First Continental Congress: reject a plan for union under British authority, an angry list of grievances that they wanted all the taxes repealed, or what they call oppressive legislature. Number 3, prepare militarily for the possibility of British attack. Number 4, no more trade with Britain. And then 5, they agree to meet again. All right, I'm going to thunder through this stuff really quick because we're almost done. So, obviously what happens next is, of course, what's going to lead us ultimately to war. So in 1775, remember, the war doesn't start till 1776, so we're still a little bit before that. But the first shots fired at the war happened at the Battle of Lexington and Concord, where the Minutemen come together and face off against a bunch of British redcoats, and shots are fired. This is kind of the unofficial start of the American Revolution, and it sets the stage for the conflict to come. Minutemen were called this because they were colonists that were expected to be ready to fight in a moment's notice, right? The British are coming. Let's gather our guns together. Let's gather our muskets, whatever. Let's line up and let's face off against them. And that's what happens here at Lexington. They stand near this river, near this bridge in Lexington, and they wait for the British redcoats to come. The British redcoats arrive, and they kind of face off for a minute, and then somebody fires a gun, and what that means basically is we're now at the point of no return. Their shots have been fired, we're at the point of war, and there's no turning back now. Okay, so that's it. That's all the notes for chapter 4. I'll get to you with some other stuff to prepare for the test, hopefully later this week. Please email me or let me know if you have any questions. All right, thanks a lot.